The most fun game of the Phoenix Suns season ends in heartbreak as the Utah Jazz suddenly start playing like the dream team, an all-star team, 56% from the field for Utah. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll break down all things Suns Jazz. How did it get to be such a high-scoring game, and why did the Suns not pull it out? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Saturday. A bonus show for all of you. You can find us everywhere. If you're finding us for the first time, go ahead and hit follow or subscribe. We are free, and the best way to keep us that way is just to listen and watch the show. And to make sure you're getting it, you want to hit subscribe. So, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, we appreciate you anywhere. If you are on YouTube, hit that bell down below as well. Get a notification when a show goes up. And drop a comment right down below here with your number one takeaway from this 134-133 loss by the Phoenix Suns to the Utah Jazz. You can also follow along on Twitter, where we have our 7 words or less game takes every single night of the season. We have Meh from Howie at Real Good Then 12. And Ayton had a decent game, still not enough from at Masco Tommy, a.k.a. Tom. Keep those coming in. Let's get to it, guys. I want to do our first defining stretch of the game. Then I'll give you my biggest takeaway of the game. And then we'll get out here with some rapid-fire recap segments to close out the show. Today's show, guys, is brought to you by BetOnline, which has you covered all season with more props, odds, and line than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, so we're back to doing these moments of the game, and in this one, it's to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, honestly. So the Phoenix Suns go down 13-31. That's the biggest deficit in the first quarter. Kelly Olynyk makes a putback to cut it or to extend the lead to 18 at basically the 6-minute mark. From that point on, it's the defining moment of the game because this could have gotten out of hand, right? The end tally in the first quarter is 42 for Utah, 35 for Phoenix, which, as you can tell, even cutting it to 7 when I just told you it was at 18 at one point is remarkable in and of itself. But it's not just what they did. The Suns went on a 21-11 run there. 21-11, but somehow that doesn't fully add up. Yeah, 22-11 run to cut the lead to 7. It's how they did it. Booker was the ignition that turned this entire team on. Booker had 4, 6, 8, 10 points of the 22 there. He had 2 more assists, 3 more assists in that stretch. So 10 points and 3 assists for Booker of the 22. And so he was responsible for 16 of the 22 points. That's the stats side of it. They make this run. They keep the game in hand. They don't allow the game to end in the first quarter. Now, even if, let's say, it was an 18-point deficit at the end of the first quarter, we know the Suns could have battled back. It's not like it would have been the end of the game. There's a lot of basketball left at that point, but you can't let yourself be in that hole. And so that statistically, the seizing of the moment, all that is great. But it's also just, it illustrates something that we know about this team. I talked about it when they beat the Warriors earlier this week in terms of just that Warriors game being a culture win and a team basketball win. It's a testament to how high the floor is for this Suns team, the way that they took care of business with all 5 starters in double digits in that game, 3 guys going for 20 plus. This one was a little different. It was all Booker. The numbers that I just shared with you tell you that, but so does the demeanor that this guy was playing with. He was so calm and collected in that moment, and I really think that was the difference, because especially without Chris Paul, especially without the depth and two-way play that Crowder and Cam Johnson give you. Heck, even not having Landry Shamet and, needing to play Dario Saric so many minutes. There were all these things throughout the whole night. I don't know if all of that happened in just the first quarter alone, but I can guarantee you those absences played a part in why the Suns got into the deficit that they got into, and why it was so vital that Booker was able to step up and sort of rally everyone when he did. He finished with 10 assists and just 1 turnover. 15 free throw attempts, he made all 15, and he was 50+% from the field yet again. 49 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds. The Suns have no chance in this game without him. That's true a lot of nights, even when Paul is healthy. But this game, I guess it's what it is, really. It's not even so much, okay, well, what happens if they're down 18 after the first quarter? The threat at that moment was, what happens if they're down 20, 25? It was looking that ugly. I mean, the Jazz, I said 31-13. The Jazz also got out to a 15-3 lead. 19-3 lead before anyone even jumped into gear. And so, yeah, by the 5:49 mark, things start to turn around. But by that point, Kelly Olynyk is out of the game. Jared Vanderbilt is out of the game. The Suns are able to make their pounce. But that first quarter was instrumental, and it's just another indication of Booker's excellence. If Tuesday's game was all about the Suns being able to band together and have a team win in a big moment, this game was about Booker and what he's able to rise to. Now, I know I'm saying all of this, and it was a loss, but I'm not the type to judge a game by the last shot that Booker tried to take that Damian Lee chucked up, didn't go in, or, judge on Jordan Clarkson and Lauri Markkanen hitting bonkers fadeaway jumpers, in the mid-range when Utah had the ball. I'm not going to sit here and say this game was a failure because of that. I just don't judge results that way. It's a game the Suns would have loved to have won, but we'll get into next why they did not win it. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by My Solar Nerd. If you live in a sunny state like ours, you've had more than a time or two folks walk up to your door, knock, knock, knock. We have an offer for you, what they call free solar. But like I know, it's not really free. It's not even that good of a deal most of the time. But My Solar Nerd has simplified it. They get the job done. Their mission is simple: help you get the best solar system to fit your needs. And so the guys at MySolarNerd.com are local. They understand the nuances of going solar in Arizona. And most importantly, they know an educated customer is a happy customer. So their no-pressure approach will make sure all your questions get answered without any hassle. And once you're ready, they'll put their knowledge to the test for you by choosing the best equipment, warranties, and installers in their network. They'll also figure out all the credits and incentives you may qualify for so that your pockets are as full as they can be, and manage the project from start to finish. Our listeners will get a $50 Amazon gift card when you book a no-commitment evaluation. This promotion, again, only for local listeners in Arizona and only for homeowners. We can't have solar panels going up in apartment complexes. That's not up to us, obviously. But visit MySolarNerd.com, select Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section to get applied for the gift card. Make the switch to solar on your terms and start your research process today by visiting MySolarNerd.com. Show Locked On some love by letting them know we sent you. Folks, going solar doesn't need to be complicated, and MySolarNerd.com makes it easy. We talked about the first quarter and Devin Booker's excellence in it. The big takeaway of this game is a tough one, frankly. I batted around a few things. I want to just take you into my mindset, and then we'll get to what I ultimately came away with. You would think if you watched this game that the rebounding totals were completely lopsided, all right? But then you look at the box score, and I think the Suns out-rebounded Utah by 6, and I think there's not really a hole to pick in that. Sometimes the Suns might be even in the rebounding battle because somebody maybe like the Miami game. Deandre Ayton had a bunch of offensive boards, not a lot of defensive boards, and so the rebounds can be a little bit tricky there. That's not the case. Pretty much even across the board. You look at assists and turnovers and this and that. Even free throws, which has been such a weakness for the Suns in a lot of their losses this year. Even that, the Suns actually were on top tonight. I don't even look at necessarily Lauri Markkanen going 15 of 18 and feel like there's any master, broad, huge observation or analysis to make out of that. The man had a career high tonight. He was on fire. He had the fadeaway on the left baseline to clinch the win. He had crazy drives to the basket where he had, an and one or some, lucky shot go in. He was making contested shots. He was driving. He was busting out dribble moves. I actually think Torrey Craig and Mikal Bridges had pretty solid defensive games, and I'm sure that those two guys were the main players guarding Markkanen most of the night. So I'm not going to sit here and say that that's my main takeaway. This is going to sound basic, and the Jazz have been one of the stories of the season, so I don't want to say the Suns overlooked them, but I just think it's the lesson of this game is you have to dominate from the jump. Because if you are going by the box score, we can get to the one thing really that separated these two teams tonight, which was the three-point shooting. You could say the shooting overall, but field goal percentage was mostly even. The Suns shot 9 of 30 from deep. The Jazz shot 16 of 31. And so there it is, right? And a lot of that damage came in the first quarter. Malik Beasley, I believe Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley combined for 5 made threes in the first quarter, or at least early in the second, I think is when I had looked at that. Conley was making step-back threes. Beasley was just on fire. I mean, he's a guy who can do this. I believe he had a 10-3 game against Phoenix last year when he was on Minnesota. It happens, but you can't allow yourself to be working out of such a hole against a team that you are more talented than. Because, again, the Suns were good enough the rest of the way to even up the areas in the box score. Turnovers, free throws, rebounds, all these things that normally would determine games, they were pretty even tonight. And so I guess it's a little bit of a, fool's gold type of thing to give credit to Booker for helping them get out of it. At the same time, knowing that the big reason that they lost is they got into it. I will say, though, too, it's not just the first quarter. I think that there were times where the energy and the consistent hustle and effort that the Jazz play with sort of caught the Suns off guard, in my opinion. I don't think it's a coincidence, especially, I would say, Jared Vanderbilt in that fourth quarter, the way that he was getting after Booker, defending him on the perimeter. We saw the travel by Cam Payne when he was kind of confused. We saw a few fouls that Vanderbilt was called for that, honestly, I feel like those are message sending and sort of like baseline setting fouls. Like those are a show to the opponent of like, hey, we are not backing down here. We're not going to lose this game just because you have like theoretically more talent. And so I think there were moments like that. I think Olynyk is a guy, he had the very lucky foul on the loose ball in the third quarter where it's like a hot potato, one of those nobody can get a hand on it types of moments. And then Olynyk grabs it, Mikal tries to get it from him, and all of a sudden Olynyk's getting the foul's on Mikal, Olynyk's getting the call in his favor. So there were these moments throughout where I do think it flared up again. Not so much in like the, Utah making shots and the Suns not being able to account for that, but more so some of these hustle moments, right? Beating Payne to the spot of the ball, getting your hands on the loose ball, winning even the jump ball between, I believe it was Olynyk and Bridges, where it bounces off Torrey Craig. It's like there were just so many of these moments where the bounces were going in Utah's favor because they were imposing their will on the game. And it's like one of those things where you can believe it or not. You can buy that those things are affectable, or you can be, a stick to the numbers type of person and you could believe that they're random. And I'm going to be honest, on some nights I'm one, on some nights I'm the other, but it did feel that way with Utah today. That's my big takeaway. I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and say the Suns failed because, Damian Lee's three didn't go in, or Booker didn't get fouled on the putback when he tried to draw some contact, or Clarkson and Markkanen hitting those shots. Like, I know I'm repeating myself with that stuff, but I'm just, for the sake of being on the same page, the takeaway is you can't allow yourself to be within a few close plays of a team that you're better than. Okay? Like, that was the case with the Heat game. It's the case again tonight. Yes, the Suns are at a talent discrepancy right now because they don't have their best players, so maybe they're not better than the Jazz right now, right? Maybe you would say roster, player for player, they're the same. But either way, this is a more proven winning basketball team than the version of Miami we're watching right now, than the version of Utah we're watching right now, and yet those games went down to the wire. I want to get out of here with a couple more things on our usual rapid-fire post-game segments. But first, let's take one more quick break. All right, getting out of here with our go-to post-game segments. The bench mob vibe check we'll start with, as always. I do think another turning point of this game was early in the fourth quarter. The Dario Saric minutes were very, very ugly. I believe all 4 of Saric's fouls in the game came during this period. 2 of them. He played 2 minutes and 48 seconds. He had 2 fouls, 2 rebounds, and he was blown by several times by Talen Horton-Tucker especially. It was a bizarre, one of these moments where it's like this incredible game where Markkanen's 15 of 18, Booker is basically going 50, 10, and 10, and then for whatever reason, the rotation, the momentum of the game, the seas kind of part, and all of a sudden you're getting 3 minutes of the game determined by Talen Horton-Tucker ISOing off of a switch against Dario Saric. And then, sure enough, the Jazz are... The fourth quarter started 107-105. When Saric checked out, it was 119-113. So the Jazz had extended their lead from a 2-point lead to a 6-point lead. And in a 1-point game, that's enough, And so that was the main thing that stuck out to me on the bench side tonight. I think you're still looking at inconsistencies from a lot of these guys. Damian Lee had a couple nice threes, including one in the fourth quarter that it felt like was going to be the one that sent the Suns into a win, but it wasn't. But, Saric I talked about, but Jock Landale, Dwayne Washington, these guys are still just not consistent. Monty doesn't seem to trust Ish Wainwright, although I wouldn't be surprised if that was somewhat a conditioning thing, considering he was away from the team from his father passing for over a week. I'm sure he needs to get back into game shape. Not that I think Ish Wainwright's making a difference. He's inconsistent as well, but there's going to be good nights for this bench. There's going to be bad nights, and unfortunately, you're put in a position right now where you got to play somebody like Saric for a few minutes just to buy other players some time, and you can lose those minutes, and it could be a really major factor in the game. I guess I wanted to do the pigeon of the game. I think you could say it's Olynyk. I mean, the Suns were able to take advantage of him a little bit. He's one of those weird players where you look at him, he had a pretty bad showing in the box score, but he was a plus 19. It doesn't make any sense. He just has that type of thing to him. The offense is going to flow better when he's in there, and he's just going to muck stuff up on defense. So we do pigeon of the game, the Karl Anthony Towns honorary pigeon of the game. I guess you would say it's Olynyk tonight, but he impacted the game in a positive way. So I don't feel like you can say that the Suns picking on him was any sort of major win. So what I'll do instead is the inverse of that, which is Jared Vanderbilt. I just want to highlight him again. It's unique. It's rare. Not a lot of teams have the types of rosters where they can get away with guarding Booker and or Paul with these types of players, but really it's the Dallas Mavericks recipe is what I would call it. Vanderbilt is, I would say, a better version, but a version of Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock, right? You know, especially Finney-Smith, and he would guard Booker or Paul depending on who else was out there, depending on what the Suns were doing in that second round series last year. And I think it's a really good way to match them because Booker is a guy who his game is all about getting to his spots in a more with efficiency of movement and with some brains behind it to where you're just not going to be able to stop him. He's not doing anything explosive or anything that, you know, other players can't necessarily physically do, but he's just doing it in a way that he's open. He's a step ahead of you as a defender. So if you can have a bigger, longer player, I mean, we talked about Anthony Edwards. I think that's one model. If you remember my Timberwolves recap, that's one model. Lou Dort, Dylan Brooks, Anthony Edwards, these guys who are strong and athletic and long, where they can sort of body Booker in a way that just prevents him from getting comfortable in his spots. I think this is the other model. Vanderbilt, he's just like, honestly, I'm sure if Bridges ever was on a different team and guarded Booker, he would have good luck or fortune as well. Like, I think he fits this too. But in this case, it was Vanderbilt. Just, yeah, you might be able to get to your spots, Book, but you know, I can contest from behind. I can make you feel me coming off of a screen in a way that other guys can't. And you're just not going to be able to get away from me the way you can, you know, Jordan Clarkson or whoever else you might want to say, right? So the inverse, the opposite, whatever, what's like a very beautiful bird, that would be the opposite of the pigeon. And that was Vanderbilt tonight. I don't know if we have a name for this one, but the absurdity moment of the game was, I already forgot his first name. I keep wanting to call him Sal. Simone Fontecchio. This is a player that I believe I saw like the Woj tweet when the Jazz signed him. He's Italian. He's 26. This is his first year in the NBA. He blocked DeAndre Ayton, and if the Suns had not made a successful comeback after that and taken the lead in the fourth quarter like they did and then had a chance at the end, if that Ayton had been some sort of momentum-turning play, that block on him had been some sort of momentum-turning play, I think I would have just turned on the microphone and just screamed into the mic for 30 minutes as my episode for the day, because it's unbelievable that was a thing that happened. Ayton did not. He caught the ball off of a pick and roll from Campaign, took one dribble. He was pretty strong doing that tonight, I think, overall. Taking a couple dribbles, gathering himself, getting to that hook, getting to that layup. He missed a couple gimme putbacks, and then in this case, did not go up strong whatsoever off of this pick and roll, and Fontecchio was able to swarm in from outside and get there. Smacked the block off the backboard, and I believe the Jazz scored in transition on the way back down the other side. So I am not here to say that was like a turning point in the game, but it was definitely an oddity, as I said. All right, that'll do it. Bonus episode here on this Saturday. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen this weekend. Now, go make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Catch up on Friday's episode. Get ready for the weekend in the entire world of sports in 20 minutes or less. That shows wherever you get podcasts, and I will talk to you all on Monday.